Hi everyone, in this video we are going to learn how to write tests. In this video we are going to use a couple of tools for that. First, we need to have a migration folder here, and in this migration folder we have a deployment file. So I updated deployment file and also changed its name to deploy car rental platform. It can be a little bit different than yours, and let's see what changes we made here. First, we imported file system here because after we deploy our contract, we want to get this contract address and we want to put this in a file so we can use it later. Then we required our car rental platform, meaning we imported our contract here. Then we deployed our contract with this line here. After the deployment, we create an instance of the deployed contract. With this instance, we are getting this instance address and storing this address on the car rental platform address. Then we are creating the content to put in the file. This content is export const car rental platform address, and then we are adding the address. And then we are going to console log it for convenience. Later we are going to create our data and we are going to use json.stringify, and we are going to stringify this content here, and then we are going to write it to our file using file system.writeFileSync, and the name of our file will be config.js, and we are going to put our data with json.parse with the data that we created here. So it's not necessary. What's necessary for the deployment is this deployer.deploy part, but after that we want to use this address later, so you can modify your migration file like this. After the migration file, we created an env file here, and this env file is going to hold our mnemonic, and we are going to use this mnemonic up here in our Truffle config BSC file. We can get our mnemonic from the MetaMask. In your MetaMask extension, click on the icon. Then I'm going to click here on the account. Then I'm going to click on settings. I'm going to here on settings and privacy. Then I'm going to say reveal secret recovery phrase. After putting our passwords, I'm going to halt reveal the phrase, and then you can copy your phrase from here. After getting your mnemonic, put your mnemonic into the .env file so that our tests can use our mnemonic and our accounts. After that, creating our deployment file and putting our environment file here, we are going to create our test. So I created our test already. It's a pretty straightforward process and it's also very repetitive. So we are going to learn what's happening here, and don't worry, it's going to be much easier than it looks. First, we are importing our car rental platform by saying car rental platform equals artifacts.require and the name of our contract. Here we are using car rental platform. Then we are creating our contract. That's how we are going to create our test. We are going to say car rental platform since that's the name for our contract, and then we have the accounts parameter here. With this accounts parameter, we are getting the accounts from the MetaMask wallet. And I created the car rental platform here without initializing it because we are going to initialize it later in here and we are going to talk about it. After that, we have two accounts here. First one is the owner and the second one is the user. With these accounts, we are going to get some mock accounts, and we are going to say owner is the first account that we got from here and the user will be the second account. This accounts here is an array for us. Now we have our accounts, we have our car rental platform, so we can write our test. This before each function runs before each test, as the name suggests. We are going to use this to clarify our test so that our test won't be affected by the previous test. Every test we are going to have a blank sheet. What we are doing here for this purpose is that we are going to say car rental platform equals await car rental platform.new. With the line here, we are creating a new instance of our car rental platform, and we are saying this car rental platform equals to our new car rental platform, which we created here on top. So after this test runs here, this function runs, and for this test, we have a clean sheet that we can work with. Next, we have this describe function here. This describe function groups similar tests together, so it will be easier for us to anticipate what's happening, and it would be more readable. In this describe function, we set add user and car, since we are going to have two tests here. First one is to add a user, and the second one is to add a car. After we say describe, we are going to create our test with the it function. After the it function, the first parameter is going to describe what this function is going to do. Here we are saying it adds a new user. They created the name it on purpose so that once we read it, it's going to read as it adds a new user, so it's convenient. Then we are going to have a asynchronous arrow function as a second parameter, and the content of our test will be in this arrow function. First, we are saying await car rental platform.addUser. This car rental platform here is our instance of our smart contract, and to get its methods, we are going to use the dot notation. To get the addUser method, we are saying car rental platform.addUser, and here we are saying Alice Smith, and we are saying this is from the first user. So let's look at this line. First, we are saying await here, since we want to wait for this execution to finish to go to the next line. That's what this await keywords does here, and that's why we set asynchronous in the beginning of our arrow function. After we set await, we are calling addUser function from our car rental platform, and we had two parameters here, name and last name. And we are saying Alice for the name, and we are saying Smith for the last name. And then we are saying this transaction is from the user 1, which is the second account we got here, since the first account was the owner. With this from parameter, we are actually getting the message.sender part in our Solidity code. That's how the user information is passed in the test. Then we are getting our user using the getUser method. Don't forget to put await keyword because we want to make sure that our execution has finished in this line before moving to the next line. After we are saying getUser, we are passing the first user so we can get his or her information. Here we are going to check the name and the last name of the user using assert.equal. With assert.equal, we are saying user.name Alice. So what it does is it checks the left side and the right side, and if they are the same, then we move forward. But if they are not the same, then it's going to give us an error. And for the error message, we have a third parameter here. We are saying problem with username. And here it's going to do the same thing. It's going to check if the user.last name is equal to Smith. If it is, then we are going to pass the test. And if it's not, we are going to say problem with user last name. And that will be the basic ideology of our test. First, we are going to alter the state of our contract. Then we are going to get the object with the new state, and we are going to check if we were able to alter it in the right way or not. So let's look at the addCar method. In here, we are doing the same thing with the same ideology. First, we are calling the addCar method from our car rental platform using the await keyword so that we can wait for this execution to finish. Then we are saying we want to add Tesla Model S, and as the name we are going to say example URL. Then we are saying the sale fee is 10 and our rent is 10 and our sale fee is 50,000. And this time we are saying this is from the owner. Since it's not from the owner, we are going to get an error since we use the only owner modifier to add car. Then we are getting car with the ID of 1. Since this is the first time we are adding a car, we know that the ID of the car is 1. After we got the car, then we are going to check its fields. For the car.name, we are going to check if it's the Tesla Model S. For image URL, we are going to check the example URL, and we are going to do the same for the rent fee and sale fee. After we check these variables, and if they are equal to the parameters that we provided here, we are going to pass our test. In this process, if there is any problem with this function here, then we have a third parameter which describes our functionality, and it says problem with car name. And that's our first describe. In our first describe, we group our adding user and car functionality together, and we created two separate tests. And between our tests are before each function ran. So when this test starts, it's going to be a clean sheet before this function runs here, and we have a brand new car rental platform. Next, we have another describe, and in this describe, we are going to check out and check in the car. So we also have two separate functions here. Let's look at our first function. This function is going to test if we are able to check out the car. To check out the car, what we need to do is first we need to add a user, and then we are going to add a car so that the user can check out this car. And here we set car rental platform.addUser, and we added our user Alice Smith like before here from the user 1. So this transaction happened from the user 1's address. Then we said we want to add a car like we did here, and we said this is from the owner. since we use only owner modifier in our contract. Next, we set car rental platform.checkout, we set 1, and this is from user 1. With this line, we are actually checking out the car. We created these two lines so that we can get to this line here. After that, we are getting the user and we are checking with assert.equal if this user's rented car ID is equal to 1. If not, we are going to say user could not check out the car. Here, if the user was not able to rent a car, then their rented car ID would be 0 since we are initializing it 0. And if the user was able to rent a car, then their rented car ID would be 1 since that's the car they checked out. And then we are going to check if we can check in a car. Until this point, we are doing the same thing. We are adding a user, adding a car, and checking out the first car. Then with this line, we are waiting 1 minute here. We want to wait 1 minute because we are saying this our rent fee is per minute. So we need to wait at least 1 minute so that the result can be reflected to our depth. Then we are saying await car rental platform.checkin. So after this point, that's the new test actually. And then after we check in, we didn't have any parameters with our check-in function here. So we directly said this is a transaction from user 1 and we did not use any additional parameters. After the check-in, we are getting the user 1. So what we are expecting is to be the user's rented car ID would be equal to 0. After getting the user, we are checking its rented car ID if it's equal to 0 or not, so that we can understand if they were able to check in the car or not. And finally, we are checking the user's depth. Since our rent fee was 10 and we waited a minute, we are expecting our depth to be 10. If it's not, then we are going to say user depth did not create it. Next, we have a describe to deposit token and make payment. Till this point, I think you figure out the pattern. What we do is, again, we change something in our contract and we are retrieving the user or the car to see if we were able to make this change or not. And then between our each function or before each function runs so that we can have a clean test, and that will be the basic ideology. Some tests are more iterative. Maybe we want to do many things just to do the next thing like we did in the check-in function. For an example, here we added a user, add a car, checked out, and wait a minute so that we can check in. But the ideology is the same. Let's look at our deposit token. So we said with this describe, we have two functions. We are going to test the depositing functionality and make payment functionality. Here I set car rental platform.add user and we added our user Alice Smith. Then we deposited 100 here with the user 1. We were saying from user 1 to say that this transaction is coming from this wallet address. Now we are also saying we are passing this much value, this much token, so that our Solidity code can work with it. If you remember, we had two separate sections. Once for the message.sender and the other one was for message.value. And this part we are creating the message.sender, and with this part we are creating the message.value. Next, we are getting the user using the getUser method here, and finally we are saying user balance is equal to 100. If not, then we are going to say user could not deposit tokens because that's what we are expecting from this line of code. Next, we have our make payment method. Here we are adding a user, adding a car, checking out, waiting, and check again. So this is what we did in our check-in test. Next, we are depositing some tokens like we did here, and additionally, we are making payment with this line here. After we deposit some tokens and making the payment, what we are expecting is that we cleared out our debt. For that, we are going to get the user so that we can check if their debt is cleaned or not. And finally, we are going to say assert.equal and we are going to compare user.debt with 0. That's what we are expecting, and if something's wrong, we are going to say something went wrong while trying to make the payment. And this should be like this. Next, we have our edit car here. In this describe, we had two different ways to edit the car. We can edit its metadata and we can edit its status. First, we are going to check if we are able to edit an existing car's metadata with valid parameters. Here we are adding a car like we did many times before, and here we have our new parameters. For the car name, we are going to change it to Honda, and we are going to say the URL is new image URL. We have the rent fee as 20 and we have the sale fee as 100,000. Next, we are going to edit our car metadata with this new variables. So we are calling our edit car metadata. How we called it? We said await. I'm going to wait for this execution to finish. Then I said I want to call a function from the car rental platform, and the name of the function is edit car metadata. And the parameters that we are going to update our car is this new parameters, this new variables we created here. And after our parameters for the function, we are adding from owner here so we can edit our car. After this addition, what we do is we get the car, which is the first car, and we check if the car name is the new name that we created here. The car image URL should be the new image URL, and the rest is the same. If there is anything wrong with these comparisons, then as a third parameter, we have our error message here. Next, we have another function, and this function should edit the car status. For this, we are again adding a car, and then we are saying our new status is 0. So if you remember, we had an enumeration for our status. In our enum, we had 3 different fields. The first one was retired, second one was in use, and the third one was available. For retire, we are going to say 0, and for in use, we are going to say 1, and finally for available, we are going to say 2. And since we said 0 here, this means that we are going to update the status to retired. Then we are going to call the edit car status. Again, don't forget to put the await here. And for the status, I'm going to say I will edit the first car, and I'm going to edit it with the new status, which is 0, meaning now it's retired. And we are going to say it's from the owner. After this, we are going to get the first car that we just edited its status here, and then we are going to check if the car's status is equal to the new status that we just created. And if something's wrong, we have our third parameter, and we are going to say problem with editing car status. And after that, we have our last described method here. And this is going to check if we are able to withdraw balance or not. First, we are going to have a function to withdraw balance as the user. For this, we are going to add the user and deposit some tokens like we did before. At this point, user has his or her tokens in the user's balance. And we created a separate check just to check this depositing functionality. And then we are going to withdraw balance 50 by calling withdraw balance function, and we are going to pass the parameter 50, and this is going to be called from the user one. Next, we are going to get our user using the get user method, and we are going to check if the user's balance is 50, because we just deposited 100 here and we withdrew 50 here. So what is left should be 50. So we are checking it here. So in our last function, we are going to check if we are able to withdraw tokens as owner or not. First, we are going to add a user, and then we are going to add a car. But for this test, instead of 10, we are going to say 20 as the rent fee. Then we are checking out our car, the first car. We are going to wait a minute. We are going to check in, deposit some tokens, and we are going to make the payment. So far, this part is equal to the function make payment. It's nothing different other than this 20 as the parameter. So at this point, our rent fee per minute is 20, and we waited a minute, and then we make payment. There should be 20 made as the payment, and there should be 980 left in the balance. Then we are going to say total payment amount equals to, we are going to say await because we want to wait for this execution to finish. Then we are going to call this get total payments method from the car rental platform, and we are going to say this is from the owner because we use only owner modifier in our get total payments method in our Solidity code. Then we are going to say amount to withdraw is equal to total payment amount minus 10. With this minus 10, we are going to check if the left amount is 10. Next, we are going to withdraw this token as the owner, and for this we are going to say await current platform dot withdraw owner balance, and to withdraw amount we are going to say amount to withdraw, and we are going to say this is from the owner. Next, we are going to create our total payment, and this should be our new updated total payment, and we are going to get it the same way that we got it here. And after getting the total payment, we are expecting it to be 10 because that's how much we left in the contract. So we are going to see if the contract were able to update total payments or not. We got 20 as the total payment, and then we said we are going to withdraw total payment minus 10, which is 10. The amount that is left is 10 here. So by checking 10, we are checking if we were able to get our tokens, and also if we were able to update total payments correctly. And this is the basic ideology of our test here. First, we got our contract here, we imported our contract here, then we created this contract here so that we can create our test. And these accounts were the MAC accounts that are provided for us, and we said that owner is the first account, the user is the second account. Next, we are going to say before each, so that with this before each we are clearing before every test. And in our test, we group the similar tests together using the describe function. Under the describe function, we had two different test functions here. It can be much more, or you don't need to put describe. It can just go without describe as an int function. So with these functions, what we did was pretty straightforward and repetitive. What we did, we first updated our contract, then we retrieved data and we checked if the data that we were expecting is the data that we updated the contract with. Then creating this test. Now we are going to run this test using Ganache, and we are going to see if this test will pass or not. First, I'm going to say Ganache CLI to start Ganache here. And you'll see it's on 127.0.0.1.85.45 as the port, and you can find that information here too. After this, I'm going to create a new terminal, and here I'm going to say npm run test, and this is going to run our test on Ganache. It may take a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes, so I'm going to pause here, and then we are going to meet once the tests are done. Now our test has finished, and let's check our test. Here we can see that first we compiled our contract, and our current platform address is here. And we can also see this in our configuration file. That's how we created it. We created this line here. And then you can see our test results and how much time they took. And we are saying all tests are passed and our contract is all fine. Now let's try our test on the testnet. For that, I'm going to say npm run test. This time we are going to say BSC, and we are going to give the name of the testnet that we are going to use. For our case, it's BSC Testnet. Again, it can be a couple of minutes, so I'm going to pause here and I will see you when the test is done. Now, as we can see, our tests have passed. Since our tests have passed on Ganache in our local blockchain environment and also on the testnet, now it's time to deploy our contract. Next, let's deploy our contract to the testnet. To deploy our contract, I'm going to say npm run migrate, and here I'm going to say BSC and BSC Testnet. And we can find this command here. Migrate BSC, which gives us the Truffle migrate with this configuration file here. And as the network, we are specifying this as BSC Testnet, since how it's created here as the BSC Testnet. For the deployment, you need to have BNB tokens in your MetaMask wallet that you gave the mnemonic of here. Again, it can take some time depending on how busy the network is, and also the gas fee is going to depend how busy the network is, but in general it wouldn't take too much time, or it wouldn't take too much gas fee. And you can see the information here, the transaction hash, the block timestamp, how much the gas price, and everything here. For us, it's not Ether here, it's BNB. And you can see that we were successfully migrated our contract, deployed our contract to the test network. And we can get this address from here, and also we can get this from, as we know, from our config file. As you can see, it's updated here. In our next video, we are going to see how this works in our front end and how we can connect this to the front end. Thank you very much, and see you on the next one.